North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. We bring you the news, the real news. We analyze the news for fact. We also analyze the news for bias, and we point out each, and the gulf between the facts and the news grows wider every day. As a matter of fact, if you didn't know that, you wouldn't be here listening to me give you the news. This is the newscast you need right here. We also do commentary, which is not the news. I'm not one of those guys that believes that anything that falls out of my mouth is a nugget. It's not. It's just my opinion, just as valuable as yours, and that's the debate part. By all means, join us for the debate. It'd be great to have you. It really would. You can do that two ways. You can join us on Twitter and Twitch. And you can also join us on YouTube and Facebook. There's a chat room going on right there. And you can also call me at 817-379-2172. That's 817-379-2172. So this has been an incredibly exciting day from a standpoint of military action around the world, specifically China, in the middle of their temper tantrum over the visit by Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan, which, by the way, is getting very good bipartisan reviews all over Washington, D.C. But China's having a problem. A day after the Nancy Pelosi trip, China began military drills near Taiwan. They look like a dress rehearsal for what might be a blockade around the island and also maybe an amphibious assault on it. Let me give you this from the New York Times. Chris Buckley, Amy Chang Chen, and Eric Schmidt. At least 11 Chinese missiles struck seas north, south, and east of Taiwan on Thursday. That's less than 24 hours after Speaker Nancy Pelosi celebrated the island as a bulwark of democracy next to autocratic China. The People's Liberation Army declared its missiles all precisely hit their targets, even as Japan said 5 of those missiles landed in its waters. The Chinese military called the exercise a prelude to a bigger show of force intended to punish the island for a visit by Ms. Pelosi that challenged Beijing's claim to Taiwan. The drills, pushing ever closer to Taiwan and expected to run the next 72 hours, will also give Chinese forces valuable practice should they one day be ordered to encircle and attack the island. China's top leader, Xi Jinping, said that he hopes to eventually unify Taiwan and China through peaceful steps as part of his vision for a rejuvenated and powerful nation. But like his predecessors, he's not ruled out force. China's military buildup has reached a point where some commanders and analysts think an invasion is increasingly plausible, though still highly risky. If imminent conflict is unlikely, even if imminent contact or conflict rather is unlikely, the exercise are putting the region on edge, as tensions could dangerously escalate, especially if something goes wrong with missiles landing near Japan, seen as a message that China could hit U.S. forces stationed there and intended as a warning to the government in Tokyo to the cost of its American alliance. The Japanese government today said that 5 Chinese ballistic missiles had fallen into its exclusive economic zone, the first time any have ever landed in those waters. The zone is outside the country's territorial waters where international ships can pass freely. Another missile, the government said, landed 50 miles northwest of Yonaguni, a small island at Japan's southernmost tip and just a short distance from Taiwan. The missile did not land in Japan's economic zone. Japan lodged a protest with the Chinese government. This is a grave issue that concerns our national security and the safety of our people, said Japan's defense minister, Nobuo Kishi. Yesterday, before the missiles landed, a spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Hua Chunying, told reporters that Beijing did not recognize Japan's zone. Since China and Japan have not demarcated a boundary in the relevant waters, China does not accept the so-called notion of a Japanese exclusive economic zone. Ms. Hua said in an answer to a question about whether China's military drill would impinge on those waters. The 6 areas for China's exercises were chosen for their importance to a potential campaign to seal off Taiwan and repel foreign intervention. This according to Major General Meng Jingqing, a professor of strategy at the National Defense University in Beijing. This in an interview on Chinese television. One zone covers the narrowest part of the Taiwan Strait. Others could be used to block a major port or attack 3 of Taiwan's main military bases. One facing southern Taiwan creates conditions to bolt the door and beat the dog, he said, using a Chinese saying that refers to blocking an enemy's escape route. He signaled that a bigger show of force using live ammunition was on its way. Tensions are getting pretty sticky. China's main state-run television network, CCTV, stated that one of the missiles flew over Taiwan, marking another escalation. China's pressure on the island, and it risks serious miscalculation. In response to a question whether Chinese missiles crossed Taipei, the Taiwan Defense Ministry said the path was beyond the atmosphere and harmless to land, which is not a no. Obviously, that missile would have flown right over Taipei. Still, General Meng said the path was a first for the Chinese military. You can all wait and see, said General Meng of the exercises. This is the first time the military will hold a joint military operation around the island of Taiwan. It should be said that although this is an exercise resembling actual combat, it can at any time turn into real combat. This is serious business here. These guys are playing with fire, the very same fire they accuse the United States of playing with. China's outpouring of propaganda surrounded the drills, and accompanying surge in a nationalist sentiment may be a welcoming rallying point for Mr. Xi, the Communist Party leader. His march to an increasingly certain third term as leader at a party conference later this year has been weighed down by faltering economic growth, in large part caused by the COVID outbreaks and Mr. Xi's ferociously strict response to them. Very interesting. And so these military exercises are serious business. China is not interested in playing games. What they want to do is they want to make absolutely abundantly sure that anybody watching knows for a fact that they are extremely upset about what happened, although I think it's just a predicate. Okay? I think it's just a predicate. I don't think the Pelosi visit was all that big a deal, but it was a good excuse. And that excuse is what China is taking advantage of. I mean, honestly, there have been many, many visits by U.S. government forces, or U.S. government representatives into Taiwan, also business representatives. Now, this is just a target of opportunity, as they say in the military. They say this is an opportunity for them to push Taiwan around, and they're taking it. There are serious possibilities here that there can be a mistake. It has happened before, and it may indeed happen again. And it wouldn't be something that would be too far-fetched to think that even the United States could be involved. The USS Ronald Reagan Strike Force is in the vicinity, and they are watching very carefully. We'll have more about that coming up in just a couple of moments. Fox News reports it this way. This from Timothy J. Narazi of Fox News. China fired at least 5 missiles into Japanese territory today in the midst of strained international tensions in the Western Pacific. The People's Republic of China fired 9 ballistic missiles on Thursday in an act of military aggression, 5 of which land in Japanese-controlled water, according to the Japanese Ministry of Defense. This is the first time that China has used missile targeting to strike inside Japan's exclusive economic zone. The exclusive economic zone is the area surrounding Japan over which it has exclusive rights to enterprises such as fishing. The strike and its implied threat of violence has complicated international tensions and comes on the heel of a controversial congressional delegation trip to Taiwan. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken spoke to reporters today about the recent delegation to Taiwan, trying to smooth over the visit. Quote, "I wanted to speak to the recent activity concerning Taiwan because I know it's on a lot of people's minds. The United States continues to have an abiding interest in peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. We oppose any unilateral efforts to change the status quo, especially by force." That's the same State Department language that has been used for the last several days. The People's Republic of China has long claimed sovereignty over Taiwan and the Taiwan Strait, the relatively narrow strip of ocean between the island of Taiwan and the Chinese mainland. The Chinese military has frequently sent planes into the area, testing Taiwan's air defense zone. The U.S. does not have official relations with Taiwan, also known as the Republic of China, and maintains a one China policy that recognizes the People's Republic of China as the legitimate successor nation. And I think that's a mistake. And I think it's always been a mistake. The United States should be unequivocal in its commitment to Taiwan and its people. We need to take care of those folks. We truly do. And I know, here we go again. We're in a situation where there is very serious bellicose military action going on, and Wells is saying, let's get involved. Well, Taiwan isn't just your basic run of the mill. I got to be honest with you. I have to be honest with you. I never understood in the Gulf War why we went after Iraq and Afghanistan. A two-front war is always ferociously expensive and so on and so forth. And I actually agreed with President Obama. When he took power, he said, Osama bin Laden is in Afghanistan, and that's where we're going to go. And he shut down the Iraq war, and he moved forward with Afghanistan, and he found his man. Now, did that hamper things with Iraq? Yeah, I think we should have made Iraq the 51st state. I think we should have made it a United States territory, because that would have given us a reason to go there and stabilize the country, create a country that's worth living in, and also a very important foothold in the Middle East. I know it's a pipe dream, but still, at the end of the day, we should have done it. And I think we'll rue the day that we did not. Now, there are other things that are happening in other countries, not just Taiwan and South Korea. South Korean airlines have canceled all flights to Taiwan as the Chinese military surrounded the island to conduct live fire exercises today. Korean Air canceled flights to Taiwan through Saturday. Asiana Airlines canceled flights through Friday, at which point it will reconsider whether it's necessary, according to Reuters. China is holding live fire military exercises around Taiwan following House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to the self-governed island. Pelosi is the highest U.S. level official to visit there since Speaker Newt Gingrich in 1997. Chinese authorities, as you know, furious with the trip. They argued it broke the U.S. One China policy, which states the U.S. acknowledges but does not condone China's claim of sovereignty over the island. These weasel languages, these weasel wordings of very important understandings are fraught with danger. They absolutely are. They should be unequivocal. They should simply be unequivocal. I mean, what is China going to do to us? What are they going to do? Try to poison us with drugs? Too late. Try to make us sick with their diseases? Too late. What's China going to do? What are they going to do that they haven't already done? What are they going to spy on us and steal our technology? Too late. Too late. Are they going to send their kids over here to be educated by us so that we can sell the Chinese the rope they use to hang us with? Again, too late. We're doing that already. I'm not worried about EMP. EMP is kind of a myth. It truly is. It's truly a myth. It's okay. Yeah. Remember those lightning rods they used to sell for people's houses in the 60s? If you're really worried about EMP, put one of those systems in. You'll be fine. Telling you. I'm telling you, you're listening to The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. I will be right back. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being here today. I sincerely appreciate it. So, what is the United States doing there? In China, I mean. Just exactly what are they up to? I'm so glad you've asked that question. The U.S. is watching the Chinese military drills very, very carefully in an interview with MSNBC today. John Kirby, the U.S. National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, said this, quote, "We've been watching this very, very closely. It's concerning. It's not just concerning to us, but it's concerning, of course, to the people of Taiwan. It's concerning to our allies in the region, especially Japan. Don't forget Australia. Don't forget New Zealand. Don't forget Singapore. Don't forget all of those Pacific Rim nations." In recent days, China has been conducting its largest ever military drills near Taiwan following a controversial visit from U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to the self-ruled territory. This is the very thinnest cause for an international temper tantrum I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it. This is embarrassing. When asked whether Pelosi's trip triggered China's military drills, Kirby said the provocateur here is Beijing, correct? They didn't have to react this way to what is a completely normal travel trip by congressional members to Taiwan. The Chinese are the ones who are escalating this. Also true. He also warned of the risk of calculations of the drill, saying, quote, "One of the things that's troublesome about exercises like this or missile launches like this is the risk of calculation, the risk of a mistake that could actually lead to some sort of conflict." As I've told you before, John Kirby is also a United States Navy admiral. Okay? So he knows what he's talking about. As far as the Foggy Bottom people, those are the folks at the State Department. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said today he hopes very much Beijing will not manufacture a crisis or seek a pretense to increase its aggressive military action. That is a very carefully worded and very, very crafty statement. It's really good. Addressing the ASEAN, that's the ASEAN U.S. summit, Blinken said many countries around the world believe that escalation serves no one and could have unintended consequences that serve no one's interest, including ASEAN members and including China. "We have reached out to engage our PRC counterparts in recent days at every level of government to convey this message. Maintaining cross stability is in interest of all the countries in the region, including all of our colleagues within this conclave, ASEAN." He added, "U.S. continues to have an abiding interest in peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. We oppose any unilateral efforts to change the status quo, especially by force." And yes, that is in the offing. Remember, the people that went into Ukraine, the Russian soldiers that went into Ukraine, they thought that was a training exercise too, until they found themselves in a full-scale war with 44 million people. Is that happening here? Possibly. And why is it happening? As a matter of fact, I'm gonna lay this on the table. I don't know why China would stop. Why wouldn't they just turn this into an actual military invasion? Why not? What's stopping them? You know, they say that I was hearing a news report today that said, well, you know, they might want to do something in the next 18 months. Well, that's the balance of the Biden administration. Why would they wait? Especially when I tell you what President Biden did today. I mean, he made a move today that was stupid. And I'm going to tell you what it is coming up here in just a couple of moments. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast today. I really appreciate it. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can join us via chat. I am waiting for you to call. We are ready to hear you. Back with more in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We are in a world that is, shall we say, a little more edgy than normal. A little more edgy than normal. China is very upset with Nancy Pelosi, although that's simply a pretext. Nobody could get that mad about Nancy Pelosi doing anything, let alone traveling to Taiwan. This is simply a pretext. And as I've just reported to you, there have been a lot of countries in the region that have made different plans. China's very, very upset with China. Japan is very upset with China, rather, because Japan realized that in its economic exclusion zone, that's its economic exclusion zone, Chinese missiles landed there today. They're not happy with that. They sent a protest to Beijing, and I'm sure that Beijing is terribly, terribly, terribly impressed. And then, of course, South Korea canceled a whole bunch of flights to Taipei and other places in Taiwan. And that's just a smart thing to do. You know, there have been notorious stories, Flight 007 flying over Russian territory and ended up getting shot down. But I didn't really expect the United States to do anything that really would have mattered one way or another to just about anybody, except, of course, if one of those missiles decides to head toward the USS Ronald Reagan, in which case things would get mighty, mighty exciting, mighty fast for all those forces that the Chinese have arrayed around Taiwan. And I was pretty sure about that until I read this Wall Street Journal article today. Yeah, this Wall Street Journal thing, I have to admit, has infuriated me. I wonder if it will do the same to you. The Biden administration today postponed a routine test launch of an Air Force Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile. This to avoid escalating tensions with Beijing as Chinese military engages in a show of force near the island of Taiwan. The U.S. had planned to conduct the test launch this week from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. The test has now been delayed. The Pentagon has declined to comment. A defense official said that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin ordered the delay to further inflame relations with China. Quote, this is a long-planned test, but it's being postponed to remove any misunderstandings given the PRC's actions around Taiwan, unquote. This according to the defense official. China is carrying out a 4-day series of live-fire military exercises near Taiwan, including missile launches in response to a visit to the island by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Beijing objected to the visit, saying the U.S. is undermining previous agreements that limit relations with Taiwan. This, by the way, from the Wall Street Journal. The postponed Missile Man 3 test is known as a glory trip and is generally done a few times a year to assess the reliability of the ICBM system. In March, the Pentagon took similar action by canceling a flight test of another Minuteman III missile to avoid escalating tensions with Moscow. This following Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine and his statement that Russia was ensuring its special combat readiness of its nuclear forces. The Pentagon at the time said the March cancellation would not affect the readiness of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. That is correct. Republican lawmakers criticized that move as a gesture that did not project strength in the face of Russian bluster. U.S. officials did not say how long the new delay might last, but one said it might last 10 days or so. All I can say is both of those decisions were mistakes. The United States of America is, in my opinion, being run by people who hate it. These are people that are ashamed of the United States. They don't like the fact that we have moved so far so fast in the great calliope of failed worldwide states. They believe for some reason that we need to be taken down a few pegs. As a matter of fact, that's language that has actually been used by some of our world leaders and some of our leaders. Why? Why is that? From the time this country actually was solidifying itself as a world power of its own, and that goes back more than a century, we have been intervening in various parts of the world in support of freedom and liberty for people we don't even know. We left Europe because we were tired of all the garbage that happened in Europe. We came to the New World. We settled this land. We created a nation and took it right to the top of all the nations in the human existence. And we have stayed there. And I guess there are a lot of people that think that's a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. We were confronted by worldwide superpowers capable of projecting power. The Axis powers in World War II. Japan also in World War II. The Soviet Union in the Cold War following World War II. And we defeated all of them. The Soviet Union is a completely different country now. A failed state. And the reason that we were able to defeat all these worldwide superpowers after, by the way, beginning our country with the defeat of a worldwide superpower that could project power, that being Britain, we came to their rescue. And we lost nearly 500,000 men fighting World War II. We have defeated worldwide superpowers over and over and over again. Why? Because we're better than they were. This is a great nation, filled with great people who do great things. We have nothing to apologize for. We've been on the right side of history since this country existed. One of the first things we did was throw off the shackles of slavery, not just for the poor people that were actually living through it, but for a nation that would condone it. Racism took longer. Equally primitive. Just as equal a crime against humanity as slavery. And as a matter of fact, we've moved from real racism to exploitation of racism, which is a completely different concept that we'll discuss some other time. There is nothing wrong with the United States of America. We are the world's policemen. Look at what happens when we withdraw. Arguably, World War II would never have happened had the United States not taken a neutral, isolationist approach. That war was lost by the Axis powers because they could not believe what Americans could do. We quite literally, beginning in about 1943, were able to produce more ships, more planes, more firepower than they could destroy. Winning the war was a matter of time, and we did it on two fronts. We did it in the European theater and the Pacific theater. We're still that nation. But the people that are running this country right now, for some reason, don't want to upset anybody. I don't know why. The people we're worrying about upsetting are our enemies. They're upset with us anyway. Seriously. Frankly, what I would have done is I would have put a buoy out in the middle of the Pacific, and I would write on it in nice letters with a really nice graphic that says, "Greetings, Vladimir Putin." And then I would have landed the first Minuteman III sortie on top of it. I would have videoed it, and I'd have sent it to him. Then I would have done the exact same thing with this missile test. I would have probably put the Xiaoyang, which is the name of their aircraft carrier. I put a buoy out there with that name on it. I would have videotaped the warhead impacting that and sent it to Beijing. I would not have canceled those flights. Why in heaven's name would you ever do that? The United States of America is the last true great superpower on this planet. And we had, by God, better start acting like it. We're not interested in destroying China. We're not interested in destroying Russia. We're not interested in any of those things. All we are interested in is living our lives in freedom and liberty. It's all we're interested in doing. Leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. But what are we worried about Vladimir Putin for? He could barely afford the war in Ukraine. Arguably, if it wasn't for the fact that we essentially are paying for that war, he probably couldn't wage it the way he's waging it now anyway. And thanks, oh, by the way, to those same European allies that keep sending him $1 billion every day for natural gas from Russia. Why aren't they buying American natural gas? Oh, that's right, because it's that fossil fuel thing. The United States should be supplying natural gas to Europe. They should not be sucking up to Russia, whose former life included trying to overtake Europe and make it into this socialist workers' paradise. We saved their butts from the Axis powers. And then they started doing business with the Russians? Excuse me? But then again, we can't harvest our own natural gas because, well, it's just terrible fuel. It's destroying the climate. As if these morons could actually figure out a way to control the weather. Maybe someday in the future of the human endeavor, we might be able to control the weather, but these guys can't control their own budget pen. They can't control their own checkbook. How in the living hell are they going to be able to control the weather? The answer is they can't. Well, why are they doing all this? Because they're swindling us, and we're letting them. The United States is engaged in navel gazing, and I'm not talking about NAVAL. I am tired of being run by timid people. You had a real meat-eating president in the White House last term. Do you honestly believe that China would have engaged in all this garbage if Donald Trump had been in office? Nope. I would also argue, by the way, in case you're wondering whether or not this is a partisan broadcast, would they have done the same thing if President Obama was in office? Nope. So we have the Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group there. We should have the Theodore Roosevelt there right now. It should be steaming to that area right this minute. If they want to play games, let's let them see what the actual bet is. They put some chips on the table. They've surrounded Taiwan. They're flying missiles through their airspace. Let's go show them what a real problem that they would have if they decided to go any further. And we had better do that right now. But we don't have that. We don't have a chance to do that. You know why? Because we got the wrong guy in the Oval Office. This guy won't even send a couple of missiles aloft. How is he going to explain to his leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American, fascist handlers that we need another carrier strike group within spitting distance of Taiwan? Meanwhile, while all of this pearl clutching is going on, these enemies, Russia, with an economy the size of Italy and China a bit more serious, they're moving ahead with their plans. And their plans include running over us. Now, I realize I'm a talk show host in far north Fort Worth, Texas. I realize I am. But I do know how to deal with bullies. And this isn't hard to figure out. We had better get our crap together, but fast. And if Joe Biden's not up to the job, somebody's got to make a decision somewhere, sometime. Let's get to work. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Yeah. China doesn't care what Pelosi did. The whole fiasco is just an excuse to be aggressive. This is from the chat room. We have a chat room you can join, by the way. Please do. Go to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Join the conversation. Let's see what else. It's just a missile test. So what? Other countries do it. Right. Yeah, other countries, they fire missiles. They don't care what we think. What are we worried about? China's firing missiles all over the South China Sea and the Taiwan Straits. Fire the missile, Mr. Biden. What are you doing? You're showing weakness is what you're doing. You're showing real serious weakness at a real bad time. And you started with Vladimir Putin. You know, we have military forces in Eastern Europe, right? You know, the simple case of the matter is, and oh, by the way, NATO might want to earn its keep one of these days. God knows we spend enough money on it. And of course, when President Trump said, NATO states, you need to start paying your fair share. The hue and cry from the left is, my God, look at how terrible he's treating his longest living allies. And then, of course, we leave all of them hanging out to dry when we leave Afghanistan before the job's done. As if that wasn't a problem for our long-standing military allies. See, this hypocrisy stuff is going to get us. It absolutely is. And we had, by gum golly gosh, wowie kazowie, stop it. While we still have a shred of credibility left, we won't even launch 2 missiles. You have got to be kidding me. Oh, my. Hell, the military and administration didn't even stand up to China. She was the phony chess move to bolster her here and let China move ahead. Well, yeah. Yeah, the simple thing about that is that the administration didn't stand up when China said that we might shoot her plane down. That required an immediate presidential response. Good evening, my fellow Americans. I'm President John Wells. Earlier today, the People's Republic of China and their government threatened the life of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, saying that because she might visit Taiwan, if indeed United States military aircraft had escorted her, that they would quite possibly shoot her down. I would like to make it abundantly clear to China and any other nation who would seek to assassinate American leaders during diplomatic missions around the world. Don't do it, or something you care about will disappear. Have a wonderful evening. See you tomorrow. No, I obviously wouldn't say the see you tomorrow part. But I would tell you, would be met with drastic, measurable, and startling action. That's what I would have said. Instead of making something that you really care about disappear, that's what I'd say. And I'd mean it. And I'd look right into the camera when I said it, just like I'm doing right now. We're wonderful people. We are wonderful people. We are great friends to have, even with our enemies. The United States is a wonderful country to be friends with. And we're the worst country on the planet to be enemies with. We will simply obliterate you. And they need to be aware of it. That, by the way, was rhetoric used by the former Soviet Union. They said to us, to our face, in public, around the world, we will bury you. Oh, yeah? Things are different now. Things are different now. The Soviet Union, Russia has an economy maybe a quarter of the size it used to be. They certainly don't have the military industrial complex that they had then. They certainly don't have that now. China, on the other hand, is building themselves up to it. They're about halfway there. They cannot realistically engage the United States of America unless the United States of America surrenders. This is not a good idea. Fire that missile. Fire that missile and tell them where it's going to land. Let them watch it. It's really all you got to do. You know what? I bet you they wouldn't say a word. They wouldn't say a thing. Somebody in some ministry office somewhere trying to impress their boss would say, my God, we've got to say something about this. And the boss would go, No, that was a message. The only thing we can do by acknowledging it is acknowledge it was effective. That's called deterrence. If you don't know anything about deterrence, you really ought to read up on it. It is genius. Absolutely genius. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. That's the first hour in the books. We're going to be back with another one coming up in just a couple of seconds. Please, by all means, stay where you are. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. See, that wasn't so painful. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report, hour number 2 for the 4th day of August, year of our Lord 2022. My name is John David Wells. We bring you news, analysis, commentary, and debate. The news, we tell you what's going on. We use the real news. Although what I'm about to talk about, well, you decide. We also analyze the news for fact and bias. I point out both. And I also discuss the gulf between fact and news. We then do commentary, which is not news. That is just my opinion. It's just my opinion. My opinion just as valuable as yours. Please share yours, and that's the debate part. You can get on our chat room, which is moving very quickly today. We've had a lot of good times today. A lot of people doing important stuff. Let's see. What kind of person enlists in NATO? Did the Coast Guard kick them out? I don't know what that means. By the way, two new NATO members, Sweden and Finland. I know Swedes and Finns. They are great people. I'm glad they're a part of the club. Let's see. What else is going on? Anne thinks that President Biden is going to lift the tariffs on China. Yeah, well, before today, when he canceled a missile test that was planned for Vandenberg Air Force Base, I would have thought that was probably not going to happen. But now that he's canceled that missile test, who knows? Who knows? Gary says that China has had a long and patient plan. They do go the long route, don't they? Yeah, they do. But I don't see any reason why they shouldn't just go ahead and start moving forward, why they should turn this military exercise into a full-blown invasion of Taiwan. Who's going to stop them? Who's going to stop them? I talked about this. I talked about this when President Biden was elected. When President Biden withdrew from Afghanistan, why in hell wouldn't China just move forward? Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine. Nobody did a thing. We canceled a missile test then, too. Why wouldn't China just go ahead and just invade? I hope it doesn't happen, but nothing. That move would not surprise me one bit. And by the way, remember, if it does happen, you heard it here first. Let's see what else is on the chat today. Let's see. Lifted the sanctions against Russia. Look at where that got us. Yeah. He also, when he was the vice president of the United States with Barack Obama, sent the Iranians $497 billion in cash. Yeah. Yeah. If President Biden does lift the tariffs on China, especially after this, then you know that all the money that flowed from China to the Biden family was the best investment ever made by any country at any time in the history of the human endeavor. Unbelievable. All right. This just happened. I came back. I came back to do what I had planned, and this just happened. The Biden administration today has declared monkeypox a national public health emergency. Monkeypox. This being reported by CNN. The announcement came during a briefing with the Department of Health and Human Services. The administration has been criticized at times for its handling of this outbreak. And some have called on the government to declare a national emergency without delay. Mission accomplished. Since the first U.S. monkeypox case was identified in mid-May, more than 6,600 probable or confirmed cases have been detected in the United States. You know, we just got out of a public health emergency for COVID-19. It moved a hell of a lot quicker than this. Cases have been identified in every state except Montana and Wyoming. The declaration follows a World Health Organization announcement last month that monkeypox is a public health emergency of international concern. The WHO defines a public health emergency of international concern, or a PHEIC, PHEIC, as an extraordinary event that constitutes a public health risk to other states through the international spread of disease and to potentially require a coordinated international response. In other words, the United States has to figure out the solution. Some cities and states, including New York City, San Francisco, California, Illinois, and New York, have already declared monkeypox an emergency, allowing them to free up funding and resources for their response to the outbreak. Considering the aspects of this disease that I've heard about so far, you don't have to wear a mask. What do you have to wear? Tuesday, Joe Biden named Robert Fenton as the White House National Monkeypox Response Coordinator. That's going to look great on a resume, isn't it? Fenton, a regional Federal Emergency Management Agency administrator who oversees Arizona, California, Hawaii, and Nevada, perfect for New York, will coordinate the federal government's response to the outbreak. Dr. Dimitri Daskalakis, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's director of the Division of HIV/AIDS Prevention, serves as the deputy coordinator. The Biden administration has been heavily criticized by some public health experts for not moving faster to address the crisis. What public health experts? One of the criticisms of the administration response, as CNN reported earlier today, was the HHS waited more than 3 weeks after the first confirmed case of monkeypox in the U.S. to order bulk stocks of monkeypox vaccine, which the government owns in stores in Denmark, to be bottled and sent to the U.S. for distribution. The delay was in part out of concern for that once those vaccines were taken out of bulk storage, they would lose years of shelf life. Monkeypox can infect anyone, but the majority of cases in the U.S. outbreak have been among young men who have sex with men, including gay and bisexual men and people who identify as transgender. Close contact with an infected individual is required for the spread of the monkeypox virus. And so it was identified as an STD. I don't date men. I don't date monkeys, and I'm betting that 99.98% of Americans don't either. Let's say 94.9%. And it's a public health emergency. This is what happens when you let your politics do your thinking for you. And this is what happens when the government is involved in American healthcare. It's a nightmare. Okay, so I just said that this is an STD. The other part of this leftist craziness involves the mainstream media, probably the people that have been criticizing the Biden administration for not moving forward. So what you have to do is you got to have the mainstream media. USA Today steps up to the plate with this headline: monkeypox is spreading through sex, but it's not an STD. Why calling it one is a problem. Sexually transmitted infections are nothing new, but has a new one surfaced? Not exactly. There are 6,326 cases and counting of monkeypox in the U.S. Most have been exposed to the virus through close contact during sex, but that doesn't mean monkeypox is a sexually transmitted infection. What does it mean then? Causes by a virus in the same family as smallpox, monkeypox is transmitted through person-to-person contact with rashes, scabs, or bodily fluids, touching infected items like clothing, as well as contact with respiratory secretions. Symptoms, which can begin to appear 7 to 14 days after exposure, include fever, muscle aches, exhaustion, and a rash that can appear on the body. And while the majority of cases have been with men who have sex with men, anyone can get monkeypox. That's why experts say it's a problem to call monkeypox an STD. Only because it's inaccurate and misinformation could worsen the spread, but because it can perpetuate stigma against marginalized communities. Why? I'm sure that this is nasty. I'm sure it's terrible. I'm sure that monkeypox is awful. Okay. But I'm also sure it's not a national health emergency. So why is the Biden administration calling it a national health emergency? Because of leftist politics. That's why. The exploitation of the as USA Today calls them, marginalized communities. Yeah, there's no institutional racism in the United States, except, of course, among the left, who use it as a political tool, just like they're using this. Look, this is simple. Practice safe sex. Practice safe sex. Be responsible. If you have, say, for example, I don't know, if you have fever, muscle aches, exhaustion, and a rash that appears on your body, maybe you shouldn't have sex today. I'm just saying. Maybe you should try not to have sex with monkeys. Dr. Stella Sappho is an HIV primary care physician and founder of Just Equity for Health, says it matters greatly that we get transmission messaging correct in relation to monkeypox. If it's framed as an STD when it's not, the general public may think they're at lower risk when they might not be. Won't know how to prevent themselves from getting sick. Won't know. No, Odin. You stay over there. Lie down over there. Odin's sitting in today. Odin, where did you go? Where did my dog go? Oh, okay. You can stay there. Lie down. Sorry. There are wires in different places, and every now and then my dog likes to unplug them. So once again, if we don't get the messaging right, in other words, if we don't make it possible for everybody in the world to worry about getting monkeypox, then people won't know, well, they'll think they're at lower risk than they might ought to be. They won't know how to prevent themselves from getting sick. Wash yourself. They won't know if or when to get help if they start showing symptoms. I don't know, if I get body aches and I get a rash on my body and I have a fever and all of that bursts of sharp stabbing pain. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the doctor. Have you at any time had relations with a monkey? No, but I have to admit to a fascination for Tarzan's sidekick cheetah when I was 8. Listening to the Wells Report, stick around. There's more coming up in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. I don't want you to get the wrong idea, okay? I am not someone who is homophobic in any way, shape, or form, okay? My godfather is gay. One of my nephews is gay. It's just life. I have no problem with this. But I do have a problem when what the USA Today newspaper refers to as a marginalized community somehow is being so leveraged as a political issue to create a national emergency over the monkeypox virus. You see, this is not about public health. This is about politics. This is about we've got to do anything we can to keep the House and the Senate. Because if we don't have the House and the Senate, then Gary says, here we go. Monkeypox escalation, but the Democrats are premature. Oh, great. Everybody knows what the problem is with premature escalation. Geez, you think we'd have an election coming up in 3 months, says Ann. Oh, wait. Yeah. Yeah, what are we going to wear? Instead of masks, I guess we all need to walk around wearing condoms. Where are the women with vulva? I'm sorry. Where were the persons with vulva wear them? And then Mike, he had to go there. He had to go there. So since it's a virus and since it affects mostly males who have sex with males, should we start calling it schlong COVID? Mike? I almost said you need to spank yourself, but that's... Gary says, well, you don't catch monkeypox from kissing your girlfriend. Right. Yeah. Gary says mainstream media needs a serious beatdown. They've been abusing the First Amendment for far too long. Yeah. You know, Ann Hoy Guzman says in the chat room that you can be a part of, she says, you know, practicing safe sex, you don't even need to get an abortion. Yeah. Gary moves on saying, good God, monkeypox. What's next? Gorilla pox? Schlong COVID. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no. Mike just said waka waka. No waka waka. That's a reference back to when I was doing a morning show on 1160 AM KBDT here in Dallas. No, that's not a waka waka. Okay. Is that a Tucker Carlson? Did you steal schlong COVID from Tucker Carlson? Answer. Is that where that came from? How did I miss that? How did I miss Tucker Carlson? I'm waiting, Mike. You need to respond quickly because I only have a minute here. Then I have to do my incredibly brilliant radio schmoo and hit the absolute end of this. Yes, he made it up. Oh, no, you made it up. Did you make it up? You're not helping me, Mike. You've got to tell me, is this a Mike Renwee production of Schlong COVID, or did Tucker Carlson use it? I mean, if Tucker Carlson didn't use it, he'll be using it tonight. Schlong COVID is brilliant. Come on, Mike. Okay, Gary, that's not funny. You're listening. Did you really say that? Did you really say that it's a national emergency because of the transportation secretary? You're a bad guy. This is the Wells Report. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. How you doing? I am I'm stunned. Monkeypox is a national health emergency. For those people for whatever reason that decided that Obamacare was a good idea, welcome to federal control of healthcare. This is just stupid. Every single one of them needs to be fired. We need to clear the decks and start over. We've got an election coming up. Would you please do us all a favor? Do us all a favor. Okay? Vote for someone else. Just vote for somebody else. You know, those people that I cannot vote for a Republican. I just can't vote. I cannot vote for a Republican. Then write somebody in. Don't vote for these same clowns. They're going to win anyway. If they're going to win, they're going to win. But for crying out loud. By the way, we have discovered the origin of schlong COVID. It was not Mike Renwee, the maniac, who came up with schlong COVID. It was indeed Tucker Carlson of Fox News. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Very, very impressed. Just when you thought it was safe to turn away from the newspaper, there is still more breaking news that I want to report. While we're on the subject of foolish dumbness involving government games, okay? Remember Arizona and all that mess regarding the election of 2022, or excuse me, the 2020? Yeah. Well, the primary election is now going on. And what we're trying to do now is they're trying to figure out just exactly who voted for who in the Arizona primary. You're not going to believe this, but they're having trouble. No. Yes, they still have not certified the results of at least the Republican primary. Here, let me move forward on this. This from the Washington Examiner. Okay? Arizona's Pinal County announced its elections director is no longer employed after a calamitous primary election Tuesday that incensed leading Republicans. Recorder Virginia Ross will resign from her position to become the new election director effective immediately after David Frisk's dismissal because of a myriad of election problems, including running out of ballots and possibly disenfranchising hundreds of voters. This came out yesterday, in case you don't know. I was watching this yesterday. I even tweeted it. I tweeted it. I said, here we go again. You see, they opened up a bunch of ballot, these crates that contain the ballots, and there were a bunch missing. No. No kidding. Yeah, there were a whole bunch missing. David Frisk is gone because he ran out of ballots and possibly disenfranchised hundreds of voters. I wonder who those voters voted for. Yeah. It's not just a situation of ballots that came from nowhere, extra ballots. Where did they come from? Now we have a problem with, well, we made that mistake last time, so this time we'll just get rid of them. We'll just get rid of the ones we don't want. Top GOP officials, including Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel and Arizona Republican Party Chairwoman Kelly Ward, put out a joint statement condemning the comprehensive failure of the county's handling of the primary election and calling for Frisk to resign. Jeffrey McClure, chairman of the County Board of Supervisors, said he and his colleagues were deeply embarrassed and frustrated by the chaotic primary election and vowed to restore trust. How in the hell are you going to do that? Remind me, remind me to tell you what just went through my mind when I said that. Quote, as a board, we are deeply embarrassed and frustrated by the mistakes that have been made in this primary election, and as such, we are taking immediate steps to ensure the November election runs smoothly. How? As elections in Pinal County have historically done prior to this primary, said McClure, it is vital that we restore trust with Pinal County voters. And I can assure the community that there is no better leader to take control of our elections department than Virginia Ross. As a fellow elected official, I'm grateful to Virginia for sacrificing her elected role to answer the needs of Pinal County. Ross previously oversaw elections in 2014 and 2016 before the county appointed a separate elections director. You know, a leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American thug. But Ross's replacement as county recorder has not been announced. Having been the recorder for Pinal County since 2013, this primary election has been a stinging experience for us all. I look forward to involving all stakeholders in Pinal County as we work together to finish this primary election before immediately turning our attention to the November election. I also want to take this opportunity to publicly thank my staff in the recorder's office who have provided me such stellar support since I took office in 2013, said Ross. Amid the slow result tabulation in Arizona, the Republican gubernatorial primary between Kari Lake and Karen Taylor Robson has yet to be called. How can they call it now? How can they call it now? There are ballots missing. Arizona's Secretary of State Katie Hobbs has been projected to win the Democrat gubernatorial primary. In the Senate primary, Blake Masters won the Republican nomination. Incumbent Mark Kelly won the Democrat nomination. Yeah, the only problem is the Republican gubernatorial primary between Kari Lake and Karen Taylor. Well, why would anybody want to mess with that election? Because maybe Karen Taylor Robson is easier to beat than Kari Lake? Pinal County is located southeast of Phoenix. 450,000 people. Kari Lake, by the way, was ahead by a particle, like 15,000, 16,000 votes. I wonder how she would have done in Pinal County. But then again, so do the rest of us. Now, I want to make this abundantly clear. All these people that have been garbaging people like me for even asking the most basic questions. Hang on a second. Yeah, okay. The most basic questions about the 2020 election. You got anything to say about this? Anything? You know what I was worried about with the 2020 election? You know, when we realized that somewhere north of 75% of the American people turned out for the 2020 presidential election, which has never happened until that election. You know, everybody just absolutely trashed anybody that had anything to say having to do with, well, questions that are absolutely necessary to ask and, oh, by the way, answer regarding 2020. Well, how do you explain this? Oh, my God. Arizona is having more trouble with their elections. Isn't that crazy? No, it's not crazy. They're going to have to re-vote in Pinal County. How else are they going to do it? If they ran out of ballots and they don't have enough votes and there are votes missing, well, how are you going to figure that out? That the people of the United States can take time out of their day and decide to vote to keep this Republican, meaning not Republican Party, but Republican democracy moving. In other words, what we're talking about here is a representative democracy moving. If we don't have honest elections, Why is it that it's constantly a travail in this nation? Because what we keep being confronted with is mainly a political party that keeps forcing us to choose between whether they're incompetent or whether they're malevolent. Oh, we just, it was just a travesty. We just made mistakes. Yeah. Yeah, sort of like kicking off inflation. Sort of like mangling any kind of response to COVID-19. Well, wait a minute. Donald Trump is the guy that, yeah, okay, but what happened after he left office? More people died. That's what happened after he left office. Well, Operation Warp Speed came up with vaccines that didn't work. Yeah, I get that. I understand all that. But let's go back to the things that were exploited by Democrat politicians everywhere. And let's get back to crushing the United States economy. Let's get back to that. It's unbelievable. This is 2022. We are 22 years or 21 years into the change of the century. How is it that we've somehow managed to lose how to do a real election? It's time to go back to pencils and paper and ballots. I don't mind early voting as long as you go someplace and early vote. Mail-in ballots? Gone. If you want an absentee ballot, go to the place where you'd cast your ballot and vote absentee. If you don't go to a polling place and vote, guess what? You don't get counted. And you give up your right to bitch if the election doesn't go the way you want it to go. The idea that we have remote control manipulation of elections has come and gone. Why in heaven's name would we put up with this one more minute? One more minute. And they keep asking us to choose between malevolence or incompetence. Well, at least they fired the guy responsible for it this time and makes it very simple, both incompetent and malevolent. Mike Renouy asks, so this one county is holding up the results for an entire state? Sure it is. It's just south of Pinal County is the southernmost county of the Phoenix metropolitan area. 500,000 people live there. The election is down to tens of thousands of votes. Flem Coughley says, actually, it's malevolence disguised as incompetence. Just where to draw the line. We, the people, are going to have to draw the line. We, the people of the United States, are going to have to draw the line. This is outrageous. And this outrage needs to be transmitted to every election board, every politico, everybody who has anything to do with trying to massage election results. Politics poisons everything. But we have got to stop its poisonous reach into our election system. We must. There is no country if we do not. And all these people of the Democrat Party say, these people, it's a threat to our democracy. It's a threat to our democracy. No, it's a threat to our democracy. This is painfully outrageous. So they fired the Pinal County elections coordinator because he's a boob. Or maybe he's just a fall guy. I wonder which it is. Do you have any idea which it might be? If you do, let me know. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. It wasn't just France. Randy says France gave up on electronic voting a decade ago. They discovered how easily it could be manipulated. Correct. Yeah, the entire European Union uses pencils and paper ballots. We should have an election day, not an election week. And I told you, I said, this ballot counting after election day is fraught with peril. Well, maybe they should just change it to Peril County instead of Pinal County. This is the Wells Report. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Yeah. Lost ballots in Arizona. You must be joking. This has been a very busy news day. The Brittany Griner, the WNBA star, I believe, is it the Phoenix Mercury? She expressed remorse in her trial today for accidentally packing vape cartridges loaded with cannabis in her luggage. She was found guilty of possession of drugs and intent to smuggle. She has been sentenced to 9 years in a Russian prison. She is headed back to her pretrial detention facility. She's been held there since her arrest at a Moscow airport in mid-February. She's going to stay there for now. Sometime in the coming weeks, she will disappear for a couple of weeks. Yeah, her family won't be able to communicate with her in any way, shape, or form. And she is going to be headed toward her at least new temporary home. That is a Russian penal colony. It won't happen immediately. That will allow an appeals process. It also will allow for the United States to perhaps, cross your fingers, do a prisoner swap. Yes, a world's arch terrorist that's killed countless human beings will be set free in order for us to get Brittany Griner. And, oh, by the way, someone else. Paul Whelan is a former United States Marine. He was arrested in Russia in 2018 and is now serving a 16-year sentence on espionage. By the way, the U.S. says the charges are untrue. Griner and Paul Whelan are both considered wrongfully detained by the U.S. government. The State Department has offered Russia a substantial offer for their returns. The time and date of the conviction and transport is usually about a month, according to David Whelan. So she'll get on this prison train, and she'll be there for a couple of weeks until she gets where she's going. If it takes you 2 weeks to get where you're going, chances are you're headed east. What's east of Moscow? Siberia. In Paul Whelan's case, he was convicted at the end of June and transported in early August. He was first taken to a transition camp in Mordovia, more like a quarantine. Then he just disappeared. During transport, Griner will be placed in a small windowless railroad car with almost no idea where she's going to be taken. Her family and supporters won't have much of a better idea. The Russian government is supposed to inform family members that prisoners are changing locations. Quote, they don't seem to be too worried about that if you're not Russian, unquote. For a couple of days, we didn't have any idea where he'd gone or where he'd be going to. The Whelans eventually learned he was going to a colony called IK-17. IK-17. He was on the train for weeks. No calls, no mail, nothing. There is no communication. They disappear off the face of the earth. They reappear where they're supposed to be in a certain sense. David Whelan believes someone from the depleted U.S. Embassy staff in Moscow could reach out to the Federal Penitentiary Service, but that would be mostly useless. In general, the service will just ignore calls from the U.S. Embassy. I doubt they would do anything special in this situation. Most penal colonies were constructed prior to 1970. You're not going to believe this, but they're overcrowded and they can be dangerous. Right. David Whelan said the Russian mob controls various colonies, which can be better than guard-run penitentiaries where torture and other abuses are common. Regardless, problems with running water and heating are common, according to the Center for Eastern Studies. Yeah, the purpose of these camps is to push you to the brink of survival. It takes a long time to get you there. They give you almost enough food to eat. They give you almost enough water to drink. And you deteriorate over time. You're too cold or you're too hot. And eventually, your immune system begins to break down. Now, Griner's camp will play the waiting game, the same one the Whelan family has been playing for almost 4 years now. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, his public admission that the U.S. made a substantial offer to Russia in June, caught David Whelan off guard. But since that announcement last week, he and his family have settled back into patience mode. The conclusion of the Griner case should move negotiations to the next stage. We have seen, based on the Russian response, they view the substantial proposal made in June as a first offer. And there's obviously some more to have as far as discussions go. I think we've got many months before we see that actually happening. I am sorry that Brittany Griner is in the situation she's in. I feel for her family. I feel for her wife and her kids. But you just, When you go to another country, you just don't live in the United States. I discovered that when I was in France, where you could drive on a toll road, and if you got there too fast, you got a ticket. No police involved. You just got a ticket. They mailed it to you. Fortunately, I didn't do any driving in France, so I didn't have to worry about any of that. Yeah. Someone evoked Midnight Express. Yeah, Midnight Express. You're listening to the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for being here with us today. It's Thursday. Thank you again, and I will see you anon. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Our chat is going along perfectly. Ann points out regarding Brittany Griner, and this was last hour. By the way, if you missed the first 2 hours, good shows. Check them out. Tell your friends about them. Give us a thumbs up. Do all that stuff. Ann in the chat says, if this was Brittany Griner's first time going to another country, I think I'd feel sorry. Wonder if she thinks America is worth standing for now. She's certainly been treated better than Whalen. She certainly has gotten more sympathy from the left than those Americans left in Afghanistan. Ooh. Boy, and you think I'm tough. By the way, this show brings you the news, the real news. We analyze the news for fact, not easy. Not a lot of fact in news these days. We also point out bias. That's the analysis part. News, analysis, commentary, debate. Commentary is my opinion. It is not news. It is not news. I'm not like those guys on television or mainstream television. I'm not one of those guys that believes that my opinion is news or that my opinion is even welcome. I mean, this is the part of the show that I have the most concern about. I want to make sure that you understand the difference between the news that I report to you and the opinion that I have of it. That's why the check and balance on that is this. You get to tell me I'm foolish. Fullish. Foolish. It's a term that describes something that is, shall we say, not worthy of consistent thought. If that's what you believe, then by all means, join us. Let's see. Always political, never about what's best for America. What are you talking about, Langston? You got to give me a verb. Give me more language. You got to give me more. Citizens or America. Well, professional athletes have been very, very quick over the years, Langston, to denigrate America. Well, maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they should count their blessings. Maybe they should. I don't know. We'll see. So on this broadcast, Joe Manchin has been extolled as maybe the last real Democrat. This latest foray into politics has brought him under fire from a lot of people that really did believe, as I believed, that Joe Manchin was maybe the last Democrat, but I'm not exactly sure that's the case. And a lot of people are pointing this out. Now, this is from Fox News. It is biased, so keep this in mind. This is from Tyler Olson. Senator Joe Manchin has often frustrated Senate Democrats on key issues in Congress and has longstanding reputation as a moderate. But now they've started looking at his overall voting record. It's closer to the party line than many other Senate centrists. Manchin, the Democrat from West Virginia, voted with Bernie Sanders 88% of the time this Congress. Senator Elizabeth Warren 91% of the time, according to a ProPublica database. Significantly, he also agreed with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on 91% of his votes. That number is lower than most other Democrats, including fellow moderate Kirsten Sinema, who voted with Schumer 96% of roll call votes since 2021. The bulk of other Senate Democrats voted with Schumer 98% of the time. Manchin, however, toes the party line on votes much more often than some GOP moderates. Senator Susan Collins cast 62% of her votes with Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. That's during this Congress per ProPublica. Collins actually voted more with Schumer 73% of the time. What a surprise. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska votes with McConnell 68% of the time. Lindsey Graham, who recent years has embraced former President Donald Trump and somewhat distanced himself from its moderate past, cast the same votes as McConnell only 73% of the time. The bottom line is that he portrays himself as a moderate. This is Manchin. But at the end of the day, he always ends up where Chuck Schumer needs him to be. In addition, Manchin backed and voted for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election. A different Senate GOP aide noted one specific Manchin vote from this Congress that particularly irked him: the American Rescue Plan, which the aide said is the $1.9 trillion bill that got us into this in the first place. That bill passed along party lines, would not have been law if Manchin had voted against it. The GOP aide also noted that Manchin voted against Republicans' 2017 tax cut. He would do that. Renewed and forceful attacks on Manchin from Republicans come as he is leading the push for a new social spending and taxation bill Democrats hope to pass along party lines using the budget reconciliation tack. Schumer and Manchin announced the agreement, titled as the Inflation Reduction Act, last week after more than a year of intra-party talks. The bill includes climate, prescription drug, Affordable Care Act, energy, and tax provisions. It would spend $433 billion, would raise $739 billion in tax revenue, according to Democrats. Republicans, meanwhile, are attacking the bill for allegedly indirectly passing on tax burdens to the middle class. And this is according to the Joint Committee on Taxation, which is theoretically bipartisan, and what they say are frivolous climate provisions. Manchin's office is not responding to requests for comment, but the senator himself argues the Republicans are the ones that are off base, and that is in less polarized times they would actually support this bill. Yeah, well, there's another reason to talk a little bit about that, and that's this. Republicans are really, really good at enabling bad Democrat policy. Oh, yeah, they argue. They do a public slap fight. Yeah, they do this public slap fight. It's basically kabuki theater. And then at the end of the day, the Republicans take credit for only giving the Democrats half of what they wanted. Oh, I see. Yeah, well. Then I would say that Republicans are, and everybody talks about 9.1% inflation. Oh, my God. Well, yeah, I understand that. 9.1 inflation is bad. But how much? How much of that inflation falls into the hands of Republicans? If it's 9.1%, how much of it is Republican? You guess. I would say, what? Maybe 30, 40%? Now, Republicans did not vote for the American Rescue Act. Okay, they did not. It's true. But they did argue to get it down to $1.9 trillion. Oh my, this is craziness. My Republican colleagues are my friends. I've worked with them tremendously, said Manchin. I will continue to work with them in any way, shape, or form. But these are things we've talked about in bipartisan groups. How can we start paying down the debt, take our financial life seriously, and get our financial house in order? These are things that every time we get together as a group, bipartisan support, and that's what we talk about. How can we get more production? Well, I would suggest this. Maybe what we really ought to do is start by stopping. Just stop. Stop helping us. Okay? You're helping us into the poorhouse. You're helping us into a financial mess from which there is no recovery. As a matter of fact, when I look at the receipts, when I start looking at the actual profit margin of the United States, we have exactly one way to pay off, which, by the way, is a $31 trillion debt. I've been saying 28.8. It's actually $31 trillion now. There's only one way to pay off that $31 trillion worth of debt. And that is with the quadrillions of dollars worth of energy we have under our feet. But boy, we've sure gotten away from that now, haven't we? Yeah, I really, really liked it when the United States was making money on the extra energy we didn't need. When we were a net exporter of energy, that put money into our country. We need to start paying down that debt, and this bill doesn't do it. I don't know how you can actually lower inflation by throwing another 739 billion, I'm sorry, that's not right. Another 433 billion dollars into an already an inflationary economy. I don't know how you do that. You know what? I just don't think that's possible. You cannot spend your way to prosperity. So first things first, stop doing anything. By the way, they're also starting to look at where Joe Manchin gets his money. Everybody knows that he's taken millions in donations from the oil, gas, and coal industry, but he also brings in donations from green energy organizations and companies, according to the Federal Election Commission. Manchin brought in over $1.1 million in donations from political action committees and companies between January 2021 and June 2022, a small part of his total haul of over $7 million during that same time period. Most of the donations come from corporate PACs, and other organizations come from the fossil fuel and pharmaceutical industries. But Manchin has also received thousands of dollars in donations from green and renewable energy groups. Groups like PACs associated with West Virginia solar and wind energy company Clearway Energy Group, Apex Clean Energy, based in Charlottesville, Virginia, EDF Renewables, and EDP Renewables have contributed to Manchin's campaign over the past year and a half. Manchin is not up for re-election in 2024, but he is in 2026. He has not announced whether he plans to seek another term in the Senate. He'll probably let this all cool down and then make a decision in the next year or so. Manchin famously receives numerous donations from fossil fuel companies and lobbyists, with campaign finance watcher Open Secrets declaring him the number one recipient of donations from coal, oil, and gas, mining, tobacco, and auto industries. Donations from individuals connected to energy companies add more weight to Manchin's support from fossil fuel companies, and Manchin still profits from the coal company he founded before his time in politics. After Manchin killed the Build Back Better agenda and torpedoed huge climate initiatives attached to it, climate activists and progressive politicians lambasted him as a traitor to the Democrat Party. But that tune changed after Manchin announced an agreement with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on the Inflation Reduction Act, which, by the way, doesn't do anything about inflation until, I believe, next year. How much will bread cost in the meantime? More than it should. More than it should. Yeah. So there you go. I was incredibly disappointed with that decision by Joe Manchin, as was an awful lot of other people. But we will do what we always do, which is stand back and wait. Kirsten Sinema is now the person who can hold up this bill. I certainly hope she does. There's only one problem with that. I'll explain it in just a couple of seconds. You're listening to The Wells Report. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172. Why don't you give us a buzz? I sure would appreciate it. Give me a call and tell me what you think. Or you can go to the chat, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. This is The Wells Report. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. If you're watching on television on the stream, my co-host today is Odin, my Rottweiler. He's been wandering around the studio unplugging things. So far, we're still on the air. Lie down. Hey, lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Good boy. Good boy. Lie down. Lie down. Just because you're behind me doesn't mean I can't see you, okay? Lie down. Good boy. He moved the camera earlier today. He apparently didn't like this camera shot, so he moved it. Thanks, Odin. All right, so there was something that just came in, CNN exclusive, that I want you to understand and know about. Former President Donald Trump's legal team is now in direct communication with the Justice Department. This is the first sign of talks between the two sides as a criminal probe and a grand jury, apparently, into January 6, 2021 accelerates. This is according to a source familiar with the matter, telling CNN, but apparently this source familiar with the matter doesn't have a name. You know, anonymous sources. The talks revolve around whether Trump should be able to shield conversations he had while he was president from federal investigators. They left something out in that paragraph. The conversations he's talking about are conversations between he and his advisors. And also, in the case of Pat Cipollone, his White House counsel. Now, Pat Cipollone is too much of a professional to do anything stupid like spill basic attorney-client privilege. You see, even the president has attorney-client privilege, but he also has executive privilege. And executive privilege protects the private conversations between advisors and the president. Now, the January 6th committee has worked excessively hard to try to breach executive privilege. And they've been successful in a lot of cases. But all I can tell you is this. Be careful what you wish for. Because if, we can see outtakes from videos, presidential videos, we can see outtakes from presidential videos now. Is that, and oh, by the way, hold the president accountable for them? Those outtakes? Really? We can do that now, huh? Oh, please, by all means, give me a look at President Biden's outtakes. Can we do that? Please? Not that there'd be much difference between his outtakes and what he does when he's live and in person, but let's just go ahead and see some of those. And let's also listen to those conversations between President Biden and his advisors. What would that look like, Mr. President? Mr. President? Mr. President? No, I'm not a waffle. I'm actually one of your advisors. Yeah, never mind. Is that what we want? A president of the United States has to be able to get advice that isn't going to be a part of a grand jury investigation. He needs to be able to have a lawyer to explain things to him that should not, those conversations, especially if he doesn't know what he's doing, those conversations don't need to be admitted as evidence in a grand jury. This, by the way, will probably get to the Supreme Court. And, oh, by the way, the Supreme Court will probably rule 9-0 on it in President Trump's favor. Unless, of course, you want to see all of the garbage of the Biden administration spilled out on the floor, just like we've seen all the garbage of the Trump administration spilled out on the floor. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Trump's attempt to weaponize the DOJ. That's what Langston says, because Langston apparently can't read. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We'll be back with more in a moment. Stay where you are. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Glad you're here. So, back in the olden days, when I was in elementary school, shouldn't that be Kevin Michael Albert? Yeah. Anyway, back when I was in elementary school, they started deciding that what we needed to know about somewhere around 6th, 7th, 8th grade was we needed to know about reproduction. Okay? They called it sex education. And they decided we needed to know about that because, well, they didn't want us to have babies when we were babies. That was the thinking. Okay? And there might have been some justification for that. I get it. And all I can say is that for a while, it was mostly handled. There was a huffle and fuffle and kerfuffle about all of it and so on and so forth, because that really does belong at home between parents. But then somebody would say, well, some parents don't want to talk about it. Okay. And that's how we started running over parents when we were running schools so that we could enlighten our kids beyond our parents' wishes. That's when things started to get out of hand. Over the years, sex education, which started out about how the human reproductive process worked, actually became sex education. Sex education. Like how to have sex, when to have sex, what kind of sex should you have? And that was out of control, and that was part of the, shall we say, cultural war that is currently raging in America regarding our kids at school board meetings and so on and so forth. Now what we have is we are talking about sexual practices that when I was in elementary school were illegal. And now we're talking about it with kids. Yeah, sex education is now actual sex education. Here's how you have sex. Here's what you should do, and here's what you shouldn't do. Yeah. And parents are incensed. And of course, the left has no problem with them being incensed because the left, in order to be successful, they have discovered this, by the way, and they discovered it a long, long time ago, back when I was in, well, I guess I would have been in junior high. The way to change the country into a socialist politician's paradise is to educate a couple of generations of good little socialists. And that is exactly what they've been doing. Bill Ayers, a former domestic terrorist that actually blew up the Capitol building, found himself being able to wrangle his way into K through 12 education. And now what they're trying to do is they're trying to teach little kids that they may not be boys if they're boys, and they may not be girls if they're girls. As a matter of fact, you know, there are no longer boys and girls. Yeah, that's right. Did you hear that they're not going to release Batgirl? They're not going to release Batgirl because it uses the term girl. Yeah, they're not going to release Batgirl. Yeah, that's, which I thought was funny. And I thought mainly it was because of expense. Because Bat person with vulva, I guess, it's just too big to be on a marquee. Anyway, yeah, now we're in a situation where we have persons with penises and persons with vulva. Okay. Chest feeding, not breastfeeding. I mean, it's just, these people, all of them need to be fired. Every single one of them need to be fired. Yeah. And remember, yeah, by the way, Mike Renwee points out it's a $90 million movie that is not going to be released because of the word girl. Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm glad a whole bunch of people in Hollywood that are everything that the McCarthy hearings back in the 50s said they were. I'm glad they took a $90 million bath on a movie that they're not. I'm suppose there'll be some sort of underground cult thing. You know, it's unbelievable. Yep. Bat person with vulva. Unbelievable. Well, like I said, with all socialism, you have to have dishonesty, and then you have to have a mainstream media interested in propelling dishonesty forward as fact. And when things don't go your way in a particular state or something like that, then what you do is you bring the machine political newspaper down on their heads. See, you're not going to believe this, but Indiana, the state of Indiana, does not require schools to teach sex ed. Do you know why? Well, because I think it's because the people running Indiana schools have particle of a particle of sanity left. We should cling to it. Yeah, we should cling to it. By the way, from what we understand, Batgirl's not going to be available for anyone. Right. Sure, it won't be. Sex ed could prevent unwanted pregnancies, says the machine newspaper. Indiana doesn't require schools to teach it. They are barbarians. And here's the very biased article, and I will read it to you. For 2 weeks, Indiana lawmakers have been locked in debate. You know, one thing I got to say before I jump into this, right? You know, there for a while, I wanted to pursue a medical career. You know, I thought about becoming a physician's assistant. But when the program first started, I realized what it would be the sacrificial lamb in a malpractice suit. So I decided that that's probably not a good idea. So I know my way around diagnostics. I'm still the family diagnostician. I'm really good at it. You know, I have a pretty good idea how all the body systems work. And when things began to malfunction, I'm pretty good at being able to deduce what it is. Like, for example, when Colton came down with appendicitis, it took me 20 seconds to say the word appendicitis. Later that day, he had his appendix removed. But you know, when was go back, I guess it's about, what is it, 2 weeks? Go back 2 weeks. Go back to, what? July 27th or something like that? Go back in your mind from July 27th all the way back to the beginning of time. How often did you hear the word vulva spoken in public, let alone on the media? I'm sorry, I had to ask that question. I just did. It's a beautiful word, and you know it's a descriptor of, well, yeah. But when was the last time you ever heard it spoken? Before this? What the hell? For weeks, Indiana lawmakers, this is from USA Today, it's biased as hell. For 2 weeks, Indiana lawmakers have been locked in a debate about how to reduce the number of abortions performed in the state. The current proposal would ban all abortions except in cases of rape, incest, fatal fetal anomalies, or when the life of the pregnant person is at risk. What else do you need? Ectopic pregnancies. Those are pregnancies that occur in the fallopian tube. That is a medical necessity. The life of the pregnant person is at risk. Notice they use the word pregnant person. So tiresome. So tiresome. All these things that they worry about are medical necessities. Like, can we propel ourselves beyond this just plain intellectually dishonest garbage? Mike is trying to figure out the difference between vulva and uvula. Let's see. No, vulva is not the dangly thing in the back of you. That is your uvula, okay? That's not vulva. No. 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 The difference between those two words is that if you show your uvula in public, you won't go to jail. Let's move on. Anyway, Indiana, they've been fighting about this. They're trying to figure out, according to this article, how to reduce the number of abortions performed in the state among persons with vulva. So far, the lawmakers have not considered a strategy that research shows can be effective in reducing the number of unintended pregnancies and thus the number of abortions, teaching young people how to prevent pregnancy. There's nothing wrong with that. It's all the other garbage that goes with it. Studies show that children and teenagers who have received comprehensive evidence-based sexual education, which teaches about abstinence, contraception, healthy relationships, among other key concepts, start having sex later in life, have fewer partners, and engage in fewer risky behaviors. Indiana does not require schools to teach these concepts. It doesn't require schools to provide any kind of sex ed. Good. Okay, Mike, stop. Just stop. Okay? Stop. Anyway, so what goes on is they say Indiana doesn't require sex ed. And I think that's fine. If they do teach sex ed, the only thing required by state law is for schools to teach abstinence as the expected standard for all school-age children. Abstinence is illegal for most. It's not illegal. Abstinence, failing to be abstinent or failing in abstention is called child sexual abuse. Okay? For most school-age kids. I mean, the age of consent in Texas is 17. Okay? When you start driving, things change. I'm just saying. Anyway, abstinence is only the only certain way to avoid out-of-wedlock pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, and other associated health problems. That's true. It's the only way to certainly avoid out-of-wedlock pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, and other associated health problems. Schools that offer sex ed must also teach the best way to avoid a sexually transmitted disease is to establish a, quote, mutually faithful monogamous relationship in the context of marriage, unquote. Well, that's ridiculous. Regardless of whether they have a sex ed class, schools are required to teach students about HIV. They must instruct that the best way to prevent HIV transmission is to refrain from sexual activity until they're ready as adults to establish in the context of marriage a mutually faithful monogamous relationship. That's fine. That's just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In a lot of ways, kids are going to figure out what they figure out, okay? That's what they're going to figure out, and that's what they've always done since time immemorial. Especially after the invention of the back seat. Okay, look, I'm going to make this plain. Okay, I'm going to cut. This is garbage. Okay, here's the reality of all this. Okay, if you're worried about your kids' sexual education, let them watch HBO. We don't live in the world these people are trying to foist on us. We don't need sex education, especially considering that it's about actually having sex instead of what sex is all about, which is reproduction. Reproductive education, that's important. On that, you can touch on HIV and all those other things. That's important. But these people are not teaching reproductive education. What are they teaching? Well, I'm going to tell you next. Wow. There's also news regarding somebody that we talked to in this day part yesterday, or in this part of the show yesterday, regarding Alex Jones. There's news on that. I'll get to that in just a couple of seconds. But stick around for this. Stick around for this thing about reproductive education. Okay? Because I think it's something you might want to hear. All right? You're listening to the Wells Report. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Have I said that I really appreciate you being here? Back with more in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. A verdict has been reached in the trial of InfoWars founder and conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. A jury in Austin, Texas says he must pay more than $4 million in compensation to the parents of 6-year-old Jesse Lewis, who was killed in 2012 during the Sandy Hook massacre. Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis filed a defamation suit against Jones over his claims that the school shooting that saw 20 children and 6 adults killed was a hoax. You know, I've told people for years that Alex Jones was a loose cannon, that he was damaging broadcasting. And everybody looked at me like saying, "What the hell are you talking about? Alex Jones is a god." Well, now he's $4.1 million poorer. Both of those people, both Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis, gave impassioned testimony when in the witness box about how Jones' lies, broadcast to millions, had impacted their lives and prolonged their grief. The suit was filed for a total of $150 million with 8 separate charges. Friday, the jury will return to consider evidence relating to punitive damages and whether they should be assigned to Jones. I don't know that that's going to happen. Jones faces another trial in Texas brought by another family and another in Connecticut for the families of 8 of the victims. It also transpired during the trial. His own lawyer mistakenly shared the entire contents of Jones' phone with the opposition legal team, who have been asked to provide it to the January 6th committee. Yeah. The only thing I can say about that is that was a text from the lawyer of Alex Jones to the lawyer who was prosecuting the case. That is attorney-client privilege. Now, those texts apparently belied certain dishonesty on the part of Alex Jones, and he was called on it in court. I expect that this is going to be appealed, and I expect that there's going to be another trial based on just exactly what happened between the lawyers. Getting back to Indiana and reproductive education, which is not sex education. Now, sex education is actually teaching kids how to have sex. And I dare say that in many schools around the nation, those classes are being taught by somebody who doesn't know whether they're a man or a woman, or were born a man and changed themselves into a woman, or vice versa, based on the fact that they have gender dysphoria. Or it's being taught by a drag queen, or any number of other things that happens in the dark when parents don't know what's going on. Reproductive education, not a problem. Maybe beginning in junior high. Okay? The rest of it is something else. Well, what is that, John David? You said that what is disguised as sex education is something else. I'll tell you what it is. It's grooming. Preparing little kids for a sex life controlled by others. That's what it is. They throw people into prison for that. There are things in school books that kids get a hold of, textbooks, that I will not read on the air. I could, but I won't, because it's not proper. It's just not the right thing to do. It's not responsible. And since we're on a theme of responsible broadcasting, Alex, good luck paying that note. And they're more on the way, and you've established a precedent. You just have to settle. Good luck. He doesn't have that kind of money. Anyway, there are things that you can't read in public, you can't put on television, that are in these books. It's grooming. That's all it is. We are trying to create a class of kids who are sexual beings from the time before they get into junior high. Before they reach puberty, they're being groomed for sexual activity. And that is evil. In my view, just my opinion, it's flipping evil. Now, what are we going to do about it? We're going to fire everybody in the school board is what we're going to do. We're going to stop listening to people like me talk about how horrible all this stuff is, and we're going to run for school board. We're going to get control of all of this. I'd love to be a school board member just for one reason only. I would get rid of bullying in a blink. Yeah, this no bullying policy would actually be a no bullying policy. Yeah. Anybody involved in a fight is wrong. We're going to suspend everybody. Okay, if you can't tell the difference between a bully and a victim, you're fired. They'd figure it out. After a couple of people got fired, and then 6 months later, you have to fire a couple of more because they'd want to make sure you were serious. Yeah, what we're going to do here, and remember, I'm a fine arts guy, okay? I mean, there's a lot of nudity in art and so on and so forth, but like I said, you know, in a world where you can turn on HBO Max and see things your kids really shouldn't see, we need to get the schools out of the sex ed business. That's my view. You're listening to The Wells Report. Thanks very much for being here. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, that, by the way, Cleo, that's already happened. That's already there. They're trying to normalize pedophilia. They've been doing it for a long time. They're grooming. There's no difference between a typical high school or a typical elementary school sex education program and what we threw Ghislaine Maxwell in jail for. There's no difference. It's the same exact thing. All right. That, Renui, cannibalism, really? Yeah. All right. God's blessings. Take good care. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to get back. I'm going to get back to my rat killing. By the way, okay, is anybody here a motorhead besides me? Anybody who is still here? Is anybody a motorhead? If you are, get to the chat and tell me that you're a motorhead. Renui, is that you saying yes? Are you a motorhead? Rat killing. Yeah, that's my terminology for chores. Rat killing. Got to get back to my rat killing. It's a family thing. We have a couple of those things. One of them is the Heffelgoff, which is the critter, not a motorhead, okay. Which is a critter that when you lose something and nobody knows what happened, nobody knows where it is or something like that, the Heffelgoff took it. All right. Gavin Mealy. Okay, so anyway, yeah, health. Exactly. Yeah, reproductive education is fine. It really is. Reproductive education is just fine. Sex education, stop. Teaching them how to have sex. Idiots. Golly, idiots. Idiots. Anyway, back to the motorheadism. Okay, here's the motorheadism. I took I lost my transmission. I have my fantastic Chevy Tahoe. Okay, love my Tahoe. After 245,000 miles, the transmission went away. So I got Mike McGee of Mike's Trick Shift to rebuild it. And he built this monster transmission that I'm not ever going to have to worry about again. And I'm so happy. But what's interesting about this is that this transmission is computer controlled. And oh, by the way, the engine is computer controlled. So after I got the engine, the transmission built the way I wanted it built by Mike McGee, who, by the way, is fantastic. Mike's Trick Shift. If you got a transmission problem, take it to Mikey. Tell him you got it from John David Wells. Anyway, so I wanted to drive it around a few days. Mike said, drive this thing around a few days. When it starts really, really shifting well and so on and so forth, go get it reprogrammed. So I went to hold on a minute. Don't go anywhere. I got it right here. I got this right here. I have got this right here. Ha ha. I've got, Gaston's Automotive in Azle, Texas. Okay, Marcus Gaston is the guy who runs the place. James is his transmission programmer. You see, I had to get the computer program for my transmission fixed. Well, as it turns out, as a part of that process, they also redid the computer mapping of my engine. Guess what? That thing really runs. Man, it runs. It runs really, really well. And I'm so pleased. And the reason that I'm talking about that here is because it took a little longer than I thought. I was late getting to the show prep today. Yeah. So that being said, fixed lawnmowers, does that count? You damn right it is. It's a 4L80E 6-speed. It's a 4L80E. It's a big old transmission, man. It's a performer. And I had some high performance stuff put in it because I might end up changing engines. That's going to be in the future after I'm disgustingly rich. Anyway, I'm going to change the engine, and but Gaston's Automotive, I think that's what it is again. Yeah, Gaston's Automotive, my new guys. They are awesome, and they made my car run. James is an automotive god. He changed my world. Okay. All right, that's all I have. I'm going to get back. I just wanted to give you a little Motorhead story, something that really pleased me. So by all means, have yourself a wonderful, wonderful day. God bless all y'all. Be safe. Make good decisions. And I'll see you tomorrow, okay, for Friday. Bye-bye. Let's see, I forgot to do it. I did the wrong one. Now I have to do it this time. Okay, that was for the recording, and now I'm going to say have yourself a wonderful day, like I said.